And this is the whole idea of this type of hydroponics unit that I built, is each can is an individual plant pod. And in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this hydroponics unit. This unit holds 24 plants, and this unit over here is the prototype that started this all off. And what we're going to do is make this version 2 in this video, and so I'm going to make myself a third unit, so I hope you'll join me. Now, what's special about these hydroponic units? Well, I've made it in such a way that each individual plant, when it's mature, can easily be removed from the unit just by pulling out the Coke can. You can then repopulate the can and then push it back in again. There is a small pump inside, and that pushes water up to the top tier cans where they feed in, flood those rows of cans, then drip out, feed into the next row, flood those cans, then to the final tier at the bottom, and then fall out back into the reservoir below, and the cycle repeats. Those are 30-litre KeyKegs, and I have one here. Now, if you go to choose a KeyKeg, I do recommend you choose one without any kinks or deformities in it, because that will distort where the cans lay and affect where the dripping occurs. So be sure to get a KeyKeg without any kinks in it. Before I go cutting up the unit, I want to use this KeyKeg handle as the handle for the unit to help carry around the hydroponic units should I need to in the future. So before I do any cutting, I'm going to put in some peg holes so we can hold this outer section handle to the inner liner. We're then going to cut off the base and use that as the base, and then we'll go forward, extract the inner liner, extract the bag, and then work on the inner liner to put in the holes necessary for the 24 cans. To make sure all the cans are aligned and all the holes are aligned, I'm going to use some masking tape and mark off this KeyKeg before I do anything else. So the cans in rows of 3, I'm going to go up these masking strips, and in between I'm going to put the peg holes. Again, using the trusty soldering iron. Now I am putting 2 holes in here only because I want to use this as a location marker, because where I put these holes won't be exact, and I want to make sure when I put this back on I've got the right orientation with respect to the inner liner. Now, just below these peg holes I am going to put in a cutting hole, and then we're going to cut off the top. I want to be sure when I do this that I don't necessarily go through into the inner liner, and do it in a place where if the plastic distorts where you're going to cut it, it doesn't really matter, because that's where you're going to cut a hole. Now, I'm not going to pull this out too far, because basically now I want to cut the bottom off so I can use this as the stand. So by reapplying the masking tape to the inner KeyKeg liner, we know where the top is and where that ends and where the bottom starts. Now we can just remove the top. Oh, but I need a hammer first. So with that done, I'm not going to cut the hole or remove the bag yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting the holes down here for the Coke cans. That way everything remains that little bit stiffer and makes the job a little bit easier. Once we've done those holes, then we can remove the bag. In my first KeyKeg prototype, I cut the holes in the side of the liner by hand, which can be done just to prove the point, but it was very, very time consuming and a little bit messy. So what I did is I got a sheet of metal and I marked off and made a template of where the holes would go and what I need to cut to, and as a improvement on the first KeyKeg, instead of cutting straight into the KeyKeg itself without any, splits, these holes here while time consuming, allow the splits to form much more easily. As you'll see later, it probably isn't quite making sense at the moment, but basically when we go to cut the liner, we cut in line with these holes, and that way there's no sort of, it makes a neater job. So while it took a little bit of time to make this now saves a lot of time making the holes in future KeyKegs. So taking the metal template, I put it over the masking tape, and that's where I know where the bottom of the stand will be and where the top of the outer KeyKeg handle will be, and then I can line up with the masking tape, and that's where the holes will be, and then I'll repeat the process for each line round the liner. So the first thing I'm going to do after I place the template on here is just to put some markers in here where I think I'm going to put the first centre holes. These don't have to be entirely accurate. And I'm also going to put a marker at the bottom of my template and at the top. That way if I move this template I can realign it again. I'm going to take my soldering iron and make a cutting hole for each Coke can hole. And now I'm going to go through each of these little holes. So that's one set of 3 Coke cans done, and that's what we end up with. Lots of little pinholes. Now I'm going to do this for the rest of the inner liner off camera, so I'll come back to you when I've finished all this.
Much later.
With all the holes punched in, now to cut open the holes. So using some scissors, I'm going to cut from the hole up to about a centimetre round in the circle away from the holes. Cut that circle out, then continue with the scissors and cut slices to each of these holes. Move. Now to cut to each of the holes. So I'm going to do all the rest of this, and then we do this for all the other 23 holes.
5 minutes later.
So I've completed all the cuts to the holes from the 1 centimetre in, and they're all springy like this. And these are going to hold the cans in position with a little bit of friction. Now, what I've learnt from the previous prototype, bottom third though, we're going to cut shorter. That way, when these are pushed in, these create more leverage on top of the can and tilt it down, and these will come out and push it up, and that will help keep the can tilted to point down and into the KeyKeg, and so preventing water spilling out, which is quite important. So let me just cut that for you, and I'll come back to you in a sec. Now, taking a can, we push this through into the hole. Now, I don't know if you can see there, see how it's tilted so it points down into the KeyKeg to the bottom. If I do this, it will automatically spring back into that direction. So this is a good thing, but however it can go a step too far. I do have a solution to limit that movement, but basically what we don't want to happen is the can to tilt the other way. That way the water won't flow out of the can when the water drips in. It will also run down the edge of the can and leak. The can's got to be almost horizontal but biased towards and pointing into the KeyKeg. Now we've got to repeat this process of cutting each of the holes, making splines for the other 23 holes. So let me do that and I'll come back to you.
Soon after the day.
So all the holes have been cut with all the can supports. I'm not going to expand them out yet because it means it just gets snagged on everything. You may have noticed I've already removed the inner bag and so cut a bigger circle in the top here, only so you could see this better when I spin this around, see the 24 holes. now what we're going to do is the cans. We take a can, and what we want to do is orientate it such that this is in the inside with the hole at its highest point, and then this will go in here and sit in the KeyKeg like this. Now this is tilted quite a lot at the moment, so we can bend more of these splines, for want of a better word, so they deform and don't push the can so much. But we leave that when we go to put the 24 cans in. So what we want to do now is put holes in this can to support the plant and allow water to drip through. 16 of the cans have to be cut like this. This is what we're going to do next. To help me do the cutting of the cans, I've made this jig such that the can will sit in there with the hole at its highest point, support it on both sides. To cut the Nespresso 30mm hole, I've got this hole cutter. While you can cut the cans by hand, I've again made another metal template which allows me to position this at one end of the can, put the hole in the right place, and put another 2 holes in the can, and these will be slits to bend that lip up. Yeah, one nice neat hole. Now for the slit holes. To make those holes, I'm going to use this drill. There we go, 2 holes. Using a heavy duty Sharpie knife, we're going to cut the slits in the can. And now we've got to bend this out to make a tongue. To do this, I get some long nose pliers, slip the nose of the can into the can, and then bend up and back. And that creates a really neat little tongue. And all we have to do now is just make sure it's a nice U shape, push that in, that's good to go. It's nicely curved, you can see there, catch the water. And to make this stiff, you just tuck this piece of metal over like that, and then that way it makes it more rigid. Now this can is almost ready to go, apart from one little addition. I'm going to put a hole here, and you're going to see why later. Now to help me put a hole just here, I can't really use a drill because I will just push down and deform the can. So I've improvised and used my wire cutters, which have these little teeth on the end. I don't know if you can see that. Have these little teeth on the end, and that allows me to apply a little dink hole in the can without deforming the can. Now we need 16 of these, and I'll go ahead and make 16, and then we'll come to the 8 that go around the top.
1 semester later. For
the 8 cans that go around the top where the water is injected, these cans are cut a little bit different. I'm still going to put a 30mm Nespresso hole here, but I'm just going to put a hole big enough to fit a little tea nozzle through. Using this to make the hole, and this is what is needed to fit in that hole. So we need another 7 of these, so let me go off and do that.
346 minutes later.
Now to help stabilise the can, this little hole I've made here is going to have a little plastic tab put on it, and this will limit the tilt of the can. To make these little tabs, I take a spare bit of plastic from the KeyKeg and cut it into a strip, just under 1 centimetre wide. Now with each strip, just go along about every inch or 2.5 centimetres, it doesn't really matter, and put a little hole in it. So you can see that's now got some holes in it. You take a tab at a time and put a kink in it, so like so, and then cut it off. So that way we wind up with these, and we need 24 of those, 1 for each can. So using a hot glue gun, we take each one of those tabs, which have been bent into an L shape, apply some glue to the hole first, then put the tab on top. And the reason that there's holes in the tab and in the can, it's so the plastic glue, when it sets, has some locking surfaces. Otherwise, if you don't do that little hole, what happens is, with the best will in the world, when you put pressure on this tab now, you see how it's flexed, it will stay in place, and then we can bend this little tab as much as we like to help position the can horizontally. With all the cans ready to go, we're going to put them into the KeyKeg. So just to show you here, we're bending those longer top spines inwards and the bottom shorter spines out. So there we have all 24 cans in place. Done some small adjustments with the splines to make sure most of the cans line up. But what we need to do now is fit the pump. And when we fit the pump, we need to do the pipe across around the ridge at the top for the T sections. And then we'll put water in it, see how it flows, make some more adjustments, and then we can put some plants in it. For the feed through the top into each of those 8 cans with the holes in are T sections like this, and they're just enough so to kink around the top. One of these goes in the end can, and this one goes into the hose that goes down to the pump at the bottom reservoir. The pipe I'm using here is 11mm. And I've just used the same pipe cut into little sections from the pump that I bought, and so the T section holes, they're a little bit too big and the water will flow through too fast. So what I've done is I've used some raw plugs like these, taken each of those raw plugs because they've got much smaller slits holes, ideal for leaking water through. They uncannily fit really nicely just in there with a little snapshot, and also that means they can be easily taken out and cleaned. Each T section has a raw plug inserted plus the L piece on the end, and this is a water pump for a fountain, and I bought one with adjustable speed as an adjustable speed just in case you want to alter the flow or you want fast dripping noise or not much at all. And this fits through the hole in the top of the KeyKeg, quite conveniently slip that through. So let's put this together inside the KeyKeg. To be able to put on the handle lid, we have cans in the way. So what I use is I use the end of a can, mark the circumference of it, and then cut a U where the can is on the KeyKeg. With that cutting done, we're ready to use the lid. Now we've come outside, and this is the prototype version 1 KeyKeg. And what I'm going to do is use the pump from that, because I'm going to dismantle this one and then transfer these plants into these pots very carefully. I was hoping not to do that, but this one's leaking too much. The second revision solves that problem of leaking. I'm going to use the gear and put it in here. Now to fill this up with water and give it a test run and line up the cans. So I spent a few minutes just training the cans, and they're all lined up, repositioned some splines so you can guide the can to the position that you want. They're all lined up, they're all flowing very nicely. Time to put on the lid and transfer some plants. I'm using little car pot rivets as ways to bring 2 halves of a KeyKeg together through those holes. And fit in there very nicely. That way we'll be able to lift this up without disturbing any of the cans. Add some plant food. Now to carefully transfer some plants. Look at that, doing very well. And this is the whole idea of this type of hydroponics unit that I built, is each can is an individual plant pod. That way I can transfer plants. Though I wouldn't normally be doing it like this. I would leave a plant to grow, but obviously I'm transferring it from the first prototype one. But then you have a plant pod like this, you can clean out, change, and then you can reinsert back into the hydroponics unit. This is ready to go. If you like this video, then please do give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or suggestions on how to make this better, please let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you want to see more projects like this, I will certainly be building other things and more of these in the future. So do hit that subscription button, turn on notifications, and I'll catch up with you next time. Keep well, keep safe.